Big news. The long-buried truth about the third party who kept your soulmate away from you has finally surfaced. My beloved child, something that was buried for far too long has finally begun to surface, and once you understand what was really happening behind the scenes, the distance between you and your soulmate may suddenly make sense in a completely different way. Don't skip, because the third party who seemed to stand between you was carrying a truth they never expected to come into the light. For a long time, your soulmate may have believed that stepping away from you was their own decision. They may have convinced themselves that the silence, hesitation, and emotional distance happened naturally. But there was one missing piece they could never explain. Why did their feelings for you remain so strong even when everything around them seemed to push them in another direction? Why did thoughts of you keep returning at the exact moments they tried hardest to move forward? The answer begins with something the third party knew much earlier than your soulmate realized. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the revelation is not simply about what the third party did. It is about why they were so determined to keep your soulmate from seeing the full truth about you. The strange part is that the third party's greatest concern may never have been losing your soulmate. It may have been what would happen if your soulmate finally compared everything they had been told with what they had personally experienced with you. Because those two stories did not match. Little inconsistencies began appearing. Things that had once sounded convincing suddenly stopped making sense. Your soulmate started remembering conversations differently. They remembered the way you showed up when nobody expected you to. They remembered small details you noticed, words you said, and moments that felt impossible to replace. And then came the discovery that changed the entire picture. One important piece of information about you had been presented in a completely different way. Something small enough to overlook at first, yet powerful enough to influence a major decision. Don't skip now, because this is where the long-buried truth starts cracking open. Your soulmate began asking themselves one uncomfortable question: what if I made my decision based on something that was never the complete story? That question changed everything. Suddenly, the third party's old explanations were no longer enough. Your soulmate wanted answers, and for the first time, they were looking beyond what they had been told. And this is where the once-in-a-lifetime revelation begins. Your soulmate may finally be realizing that the connection they kept trying to explain away was never erased by distance. The more they uncovered, the more one truth became impossible to ignore. Keeping you apart required constant influence, but remembering you required no effort at all. Your presence remained naturally in their mind. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The third party could control what was said around your soulmate, but they could never completely control what your soulmate remembered, questioned, or felt privately. And now one final detail has surfaced, a detail connected directly to the moment your soulmate first began pulling away from you. That detail may reveal who planted the first doubt, why it happened at exactly that time, and why the third party became increasingly unsettled whenever your name returned to the conversation. But the biggest surprise is still ahead, because your soulmate has not merely discovered that something was hidden. They are beginning to understand what the third party feared would happen if you and your soulmate ever spoke openly again, and that truth could completely change what happens next. What your soulmate discovered next was the one thing the third party never expected them to question. Until this moment, your soulmate had been looking at the past as separate memories, one conversation here, one misunderstanding there, one unexplained moment of distance that seemed too small to matter. But suddenly those moments began connecting, and the pattern was impossible to ignore. Don't skip, because this is where everything starts turning in a completely unexpected direction. Your soulmate remembered that whenever they were closest to reaching out to you, something would suddenly happen that made them hesitate. A new doubt would appear. A carefully chosen sentence would make them question your intentions. A simple situation would be presented in a way that made your soulmate believe stepping back was the sensible choice. But now they are seeing something they could not see before. The same person seemed to be present around many of those turning points. And when your soulmate finally noticed that pattern, they stopped asking, "Why did things go wrong between us?" and started asking, "Who benefited every time we moved farther apart?" Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. That single question opened a door the third party had worked very hard to keep closed. Then came an even bigger surprise. Your soulmate began remembering something you once said, something they may not have fully understood at the time. Maybe you tried to explain yourself. Maybe you sensed that information was being twisted before it reached them. Maybe you simply asked them to trust what they personally knew about you instead of what other people were saying. Back then, your words may have seemed emotional or confusing. Now those same words suddenly carry a completely different meaning. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that you may have been reacting to a situation they could not yet see. Don't skip. The deeper they look, the more uncomfortable the truth becomes, because the third party's influence appears to have depended on one thing: your soulmate never speaking directly to you about what they had heard. As long as questions remained unanswered, assumptions could survive. But one genuine conversation between you could have changed everything. And that may explain why opportunities for clarity always seem to disappear at exactly the wrong moment. Your soulmate is now wondering how different everything might have been if they had simply asked you one question instead of accepting someone else's version of the story. But something even more powerful is happening now. Your soulmate is no longer searching only for answers about the past, they are deciding what those answers mean for the future. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The third party may have believed that enough time would make your soulmate stop questioning everything, yet time appears to have done the opposite. The distance gave your soulmate room to notice what never added up. The silence made certain memories louder. And now the truth they buried is beginning to rise piece by piece. Your soulmate has reached the point where one final question cannot be avoided: if I was wrong about what happened between us, what else was I wrong about? That question could change their entire perspective on you. Because there is still one missing detail, the detail that explains why the third party became involved in your connection in the first place. And when your soulmate finally understands that reason, they may realize this was never simply about keeping two people apart. There was something about your connection that made the third party believe that if you and your soulmate ever discovered the full truth together, their influence would disappear completely. And that revelation is closer than anyone expected. Then one memory returned that your soulmate could no longer dismiss, and suddenly the entire story began looking different. It was a moment they had almost forgotten, a conversation where the third party seemed to know something about you that your soulmate had never personally shared. At first, it meant nothing. Now it means everything. Don't skip, because this tiny detail could be the thread that unravels the entire mystery. Your soulmate started wondering where that information came from, who said it first, and why it appeared at exactly the moment your connection was becoming stronger. The deeper they thought about it, the clearer one possibility became. Perhaps they had been reacting to a version of events instead of discovering the truth for themselves. That realization hit differently because your soulmate remembered how naturally things once felt with you before outside opinions became louder. They remembered conversations that needed no explanation, moments when they understood you without anyone translating your intentions, and a connection that seemed surprisingly difficult to forget. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Because now your soulmate is comparing what they personally experienced with what they were later encouraged to believe, and those two versions are beginning to collide. But the biggest shift happened when your soulmate stopped defending their old decision. For the first time, instead of saying, "I had my reasons," they quietly wondered, were those reasons actually mine? That question changed the emotional direction of everything. Don't skip. Your soulmate began replaying the exact period when the distance started. They remembered how quickly uncertainty appeared after certain conversations. They remembered being encouraged to wait, stay silent, or assume that you had already moved on. Yet whenever your soulmate tried to truly release the connection, something inside them resisted. Your name would return to their thoughts. A memory would surface unexpectedly. A familiar feeling would appear when they least expected it. And gradually they understood something surprising: whatever separated you externally never fully changed what they privately felt. The third party may have influenced circumstances, interpretations, and timing, but they could not rewrite every authentic memory your soulmate carried. And those memories are now becoming evidence, not evidence of some guaranteed future, but evidence that your soulmate may never have received the complete picture. Now comes the revelation the third party may have feared most: your soulmate is beginning to trust their own questions more than someone else's answers. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The more your soulmate examines the past, the more they recognize that one direct conversation with you could settle questions that have remained unresolved for far too long. And that possibility changes everything. Because if your soulmate reaches out and hears your side without interruption, without assumptions, and without anyone speaking between you, the old story may no longer survive. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that the real power was never in keeping you physically apart, it was in keeping both of you uncertain about what the other truly felt. Once that uncertainty disappears, the entire situation changes. But there is still one buried piece your soulmate has not uncovered yet: why the third party became so invested in your connection before anything had even fallen apart. And when that reason finally surfaces, your soulmate may discover that the interference began much earlier than they ever imagined, and one forgotten conversation could reveal exactly when it started, and then the forgotten conversation finally came back to your soulmate, and one sentence inside it changed the meaning of everything. Long before the distance, before the unanswered questions, before your soulmate began doubting what they personally felt, the third party had apparently noticed something important: your soulmate behaved differently whenever you entered the conversation. Their energy shifted. Their certainty became stronger. They spoke about possibilities they normally avoided discussing. Don't skip, because this is where the buried reason begins to surface. The third party may have realized before your soulmate did that your connection was becoming emotionally significant, and that realization changed the way they responded to you. Small doubts started appearing. Innocent moments were questioned. Your soulmate was encouraged to analyze things that had once felt natural. Yet the shocking part is what your soulmate understands now. Many of those concerns appeared before there was actually a serious problem between you. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Because if the doubts came before the problems, your soulmate has to consider a completely different possibility. The distance may not have started because the connection was failing. The connection may have started failing because doubt was repeatedly placed around something that had originally been growing. Your soulmate then remembered another detail that seemed meaningless at the time. Whenever they spoke positively about you, the conversation somehow shifted toward uncertainty. Whenever they considered contacting you, they were reminded of reasons to wait. Whenever they started believing the connection deserved another chance, another question appeared. Don't skip now, because your soulmate has finally noticed something powerful. Every delay created more room for misunderstanding, and every misunderstanding created more distance. Yet there was one thing nobody expected. Even after all that time, your soulmate never completely replaced the unanswered questions surrounding you. They could distract themselves, move forward with daily life, and pretend the chapter was finished, but privately, one question remained: what would I discover if I finally heard the entire story directly from them? That question is becoming harder to silence. Your soulmate is no longer satisfied with second-hand explanations. They want to understand what you knew, what you experienced, and whether the moment everything changed was really what they were told it was. And once someone begins searching for clarity instead of defending an old belief, the truth becomes much harder to keep buried, but the most surprising discovery may still be ahead, because your soulmate is beginning to realize the third party's greatest advantage was never a single story, it was timing. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Doubt appeared when emotions were strongest. Silence appeared when communication mattered most. Distance appeared before either of you could fully understand what was changing. Now your soulmate is mentally returning to that exact turning point, and one overlooked detail refuses to disappear. Someone may have known that your soulmate was preparing to make a meaningful choice concerning you before you ever heard about it. That possibility changes the entire timeline. Don't skip. Because if your soulmate confirms what happened during that short window, they may finally understand why everything shifted so suddenly. And there is an even bigger revelation underneath it. The third party may never have feared you personally as much as they feared the decision your soulmate was becoming ready to make about you. That decision was interrupted, but it may never have been forgotten. Now your soulmate is remembering what they originally wanted before all the outside noise began, and what they remember next could bring the deepest hidden truth of this entire story directly into the light. Now the deepest layer of the story is beginning to open, because your soulmate has remembered what they were preparing to do before everything suddenly changed. It was not a casual thought. They had reached a private decision about you, one they had barely begun putting into words. They were considering closing the distance, speaking honestly, and finally discovering where this connection could truly go. Don't skip, because this is exactly where the timeline becomes impossible to ignore. Shortly after that decision formed, uncertainty suddenly surrounded everything. Conversations changed. Questions appeared. Your soulmate began hearing reasons why they should slow down, reconsider, and wait. At the time, they believed those doubts were protecting them from making the wrong choice. But now they are asking something completely different. Why did all of those doubts arrive precisely when they were becoming certain about you? Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Because your soulmate has realized that before outside voices became involved, their heart was not nearly as confused as they later remembered it being. And that realization is forcing them to reconsider the entire beginning of your separation. Then another memory surfaced, one so specific that your soulmate could not explain it away. There had been something they wanted to tell you directly, but somehow they delayed the conversation. One day became another. The perfect moment never arrived. And eventually, silence created its own story. Don't skip. This is where your soulmate understands the real cost of what happened. Neither of you may have been responding to complete information. You were interpreting their silence while they were interpreting your reaction to that silence, and between those two perspectives sat unanswered questions that became larger with time. But now your soulmate sees the pattern. They are beginning to understand that clarity was the one thing this situation never received. That is why the connection remained unfinished in their mind. They never reached the point where both of you could place the truth on the same table and compare what actually happened. And now the possibility of doing exactly that has returned. Not because someone promised them a perfect ending, but because your soulmate no longer wants an old misunderstanding making decisions for their future. And here comes the revelation that could overturn everything your soulmate once believed. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate is beginning to suspect that the third party did not create their feelings, and could never erase them. They simply influenced the moment when your soulmate was deciding what those feelings meant. That difference is enormous. Because once your soulmate recognizes it, they can separate their genuine emotions from the doubts that arrived later. Suddenly, memories of you are no longer being viewed through someone else's interpretation. Your soulmate is looking at them with fresh eyes, and one truth keeps returning. Before everything became complicated, they were moving toward you, not away from you. Don't skip, because there is still one final piece buried underneath that realization. Your soulmate remembers exactly who they spoke to immediately before changing their mind, and they may also remember the exact words that changed their direction. If those words were based on incomplete information, the entire reason for staying away from you could collapse. And once that happens, your soulmate will face a choice nobody can make for them: continue living by an old version of the story, or finally seek the truth directly from the one person they never truly stopped wondering about, you. And suddenly, the exact words came back to your soulmate with a clarity they could no longer ignore. The conversation they had almost forgotten was no longer just another memory, it was the turning point. Before that moment, your soulmate had been preparing to move closer to you, to speak honestly, and to finally stop hiding behind uncertainty. But one carefully framed idea made them hesitate. They were encouraged to believe that your silence meant you had already chosen a different direction. Don't skip, because this changes the meaning of everything that followed. Your soulmate never confirmed it directly with you. They simply watched, waited, and interpreted every quiet moment through that. Meanwhile, you may have been looking at their silence and reaching your own conclusions. Two people were waiting for clarity from each other while neither fully understood what the other had been told. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Because your soulmate is finally recognizing the painful irony, the distance itself became the proof of a story that the distance had helped create. And once they understood that, one question immediately followed: what if neither of us actually wanted things to end the way they did? That question opened everything your soulmate had tried to close. They remembered how many times they almost reached out. They remembered writing words in their mind and then deciding to wait another day. They remembered hearing your name and feeling an emotion they could never completely explain away. Don't skip now, because the biggest revelation is not that your soulmate remembers you, it is that they are beginning to understand why forgetting never worked. There was never enough direct truth to create real closure. Too much remained assumed, interpreted, or left unsaid. And now the long-buried truth about the third party is taking on a completely different meaning. Your soulmate may be realizing that outside influence only worked while they refused to question it. The moment they began comparing those old claims with their own memories, the foundation started weakening. One contradiction led to another. One forgotten detail exposed another unanswered question. And now your soulmate is standing before the realization they once avoided. They may have trusted an interpretation of you more than they trusted what they had personally experienced with you. That realization cannot easily be forgotten. But what happens next could be bigger than everything that came before. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate now has two versions of the past in front of them, the version shaped by assumptions, and the version built from what they personally remember. And those versions no longer fit together. They remember moving toward you before uncertainty appeared. They remember feelings that remained after the distance. Most importantly, they remember that the conversation you truly needed never happened. Don't skip, because this is the moment the third party's influence begins losing its greatest advantage, the unanswered question. Your soulmate no longer wants somebody else to explain you to them. They want clarity that comes directly from the source. And there is one final discovery still waiting beneath everything. Your soulmate may soon understand that the third party's hidden reason was never simply about keeping you apart. It was about preventing a moment of honesty powerful enough to make every old misunderstanding collapse at once. Now that moment is possible again. And if your soulmate chooses truth over assumption this time, the next chapter will not be decided by the third party, the past, or the silence between you. It will be decided by what finally happens when nothing stands between two people and the truth they should have heard from each other long ago, but just when your soulmate thought they had finally understood the whole story, one last detail changed everything again. It was not another rumor, another assumption, or another memory they could easily dismiss. It was the realization that the third party seemed to understand exactly which uncertainty would make your soulmate step back from you. Don't skip, because this is where the long-buried truth reaches its most surprising point. Your soulmate began looking back at the person they were before everything changed, and something became unmistakable. They had once trusted what they felt with you more than they trusted their fears. Then, little by little, that confidence disappeared. Not because every feeling changed, but because questions replaced certainty. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate now understands that the most powerful barrier between you was never physical distance. It was the belief that reaching out would no longer matter. And once that belief is questioned, the entire wall begins falling. Your soulmate is asking themselves something they never expected to ask again. What if the truth I needed was always one honest conversation away? That question has awakened something they thought time had already settled. Your soulmate is no longer replaying the past simply because they miss what happened, they are replaying it because the pieces finally connect differently. Don't skip. They remember how naturally they once wanted to move toward you. They remember exactly when hesitation entered the picture. They remember the words that encouraged them to wait. And now they understand that waiting created more waiting until silence looked permanent. But silence never answered the biggest question. It never revealed what you truly would have.